Hi everyone, I'm Joe. Today it's time for me to do my reading wrap up for the month of July 2019. Now, July was an interesting reading month because I read a decent amount of books, 9 in total. However, I only actually liked 1 out of the 9 books that I actually read. So 8 books didn't work for me and I frankly did not enjoy. This means that this is actually the worst reading month I've had since I've been creating videos on BookTube in the last 5.5 years, which makes this a very odd video and could make it a very curious video because I don't normally talk about such a large amount of books that didn't work out for me. We'll see how it goes. It could be odd to say the least. And the first book that I'm going to talk about is one of the ones that didn't work out for me. The one that did work out for me, by the way, will be towards the end. And this first book is Cryptozoic by Brian W. Aldiss. Now, the concept of this should, in theory, work for me because it is based around the idea of time travel, which is a concept that I often like, although I often sometimes have issues with it because of paradoxes and how that is dealt with. This doesn't deal with paradoxes, however, as this is based on the idea of mind travel, where you go into a deep sleep, essentially, helped by medical technology, and you travel in time via your mind, but you are physically there on the other end. However, it's a strange concept, but it does work in this particular circumstance, and I had no issues with that side of the book. However, very few other aspects of the book worked for me. The plot line is based around the main character called Edward Bush. He is an artist. He essentially gets sort of co-opted against his will to become an assassin, essentially, and kill somebody in the past. He doesn't want to do it, but if he doesn't, horrible things will happen to him, frankly. So he kind of has to. And it goes from there, frankly. I'm not going to say too much more. You know, he has some sort of adventures in the past, so to speak. Now, the writing was one of the major areas where the book failed because the writing was slow and clunky, and in particular the dialogue did not feel realistic and it felt stilted and forced most of the time, which was a shame because I was expecting to like this book. I thought the synopsis in the back sounded ideal, and yet it didn't work. It just, every aspect of it almost worked but not quite. It was just slightly off kilter by a small amount, which was a shame because at every moment I was thinking, right, it'll get better in a minute, surely, and it didn't. It was a shame, but you know, these things happen. I mean, this is only the second book by Aldiss. The first one I believe I liked. This one didn't. So, you know, 50-50 so far with him. The second book that I read was The Secret of Crickley Hall by James Herbert. Now, this is the 4th book, I believe, I've read by James Herbert, and it's the first one that did not work for me. The other 3 I actually rather enjoyed and had strange and curious ideas, but they did work out in the end. This had a strange and curious idea as well, but it was overlong for one thing. I mean, it's a fairly long-ish book. It's over 600 pages in total, which considering the plot line and the way the action runs is far too much. This should have been reduced in size, for one thing. The premise of the book is relatively simple as such. It's a family moves to a country manor, Crickley Hall. Crickley Hall has some dark secrets of its own, you know, murder and intrigue and things in the past, since the start of the book. They move to this house in the country because a year previously, this family's youngest child gets kidnapped or taken or killed. They are not sure. The child disappears. So, and this is where the book falls. They go to an isolated country house where the main female lead, she is left alone essentially in this house where children go to school. The husband, who's American, he is an engineer, so he goes off to work each day. She's essentially left alone in this house to dwell on and overthink things about what happened or potentially could have happened to her son, which already is not working very well because surely if you'd been in that situation you wouldn't go to a dark, gloomy manor house in the countryside where there's no people around and you are literally staying on your own most days to dwell on thoughts of a horrible event. Surely you'd want to be around some other forms of people or life, even if you don't talk to them, at least being around them might help take your mind off the horrible events that happened. Apparently the family likes being in an environment where it's dark and gloomy and they can dwell on the past. Each to their own. Now, that by itself breaks the book pretty badly and made me, frankly, really hard going, because it's like, really, you're going to be that sort of stupid about an idea? It doesn't get much better, because the secret of Crickly Hall is frankly fairly obvious, fairly early in the book, and it's not that exciting. It's a concept that I've come across before in other books. The writing was okay, but very slow-winded. The book takes its time to make every single point, and it doesn't make the point that well. And the characters are, as I've said, because of the idea of them going into this country house, frankly not believable. They don't appear as if they could exist. Not just them, but all these supporting characters as well. None of them work very well. Sadly, this book was pretty much a failure for me in almost every respect. I can understand what he was trying to achieve, but for me, it didn't work. But overall, James Herbert is still an author that I want to read more by, though, because of previous books. So, you know, it's still promised for the future. The next book I read was Slaughterhouse 5 by Kurt Vonnegut. Now, this is considered a classic book of the science fiction genre. The main character is both two people, as such, I suppose you could say, because he starts off the book as an old man. He's sort of near the end of his life, but he keeps time travelling in a way to a previous time in his life, although he can't remember it now, where he was in World War One. And this concept where he keeps jumping between the time zones and we can't remember why, and when he jumps back, his mind is kind of halfway between the current time zone he's in now as an old man, but also between the time zone then. Is a strange one. It's an anti-war novel, which I understand the concept of, and I've read other anti-war novels. Frankly, most of them have worked out better for me, because this, it seemed fractured, frankly. That was the main problem with it. It felt to me as though Kurt Vonnegut had written part of the first part of the book at one point. He got distracted by writing another book for, say, a year. Then he'd written another section. Then he got distracted again for another length of time. Then he wrote another section, and he wrote it in several chunks where there's time between, because the books felt disparate and they didn't feel connected entirely. They sort of, it felt fractured in a really strange, odd way that I do sadly have a little bit of experience with, because I've come across other books that have this fractured element to them. Sometimes they actually work in some cases because they're done on purpose. This felt as though that was not actually on purpose. It just felt as though it was just me and my perceptions of the book made it feel fractured, which was a shame, because I thought that I might like this, because the sort of time mapping aspect of it, I thought it could be quite a curious concept, and it is. But the fractured nature of it, though, didn't work out for me. I mean, the dialogue between characters was good, the writing was good, but it's that fractured nature. It just ruined the book for me, frankly. And maybe I will probably be reading it in the future, and I will be prepared for that sort of slightly odd nature where it's broken in several places. It feels not connected, and I'll be able to, in my own mind, sort of get past that, and I might enjoy it more. I don't know, but for now, this didn't work out for me very well. But I can understand why it does work for some people, and why some people it is a very powerful book, because it does have powerful ideas and decent writing. It's just one concept of it didn't work for me, sadly. The next book that I read was The Affirmation by Christopher Priest, and yes, this is yet another SF Masterworks. I was sort of going through a few of the Masterworks this month, and this one again as is becoming familiar in this video, did not work out for me at all. Actually, this was actually really terrible, possibly almost the worst book of this month, which considering most of them weren't very good, that's quite an achievement. Now, the idea of this book is the main character, who is called Peter Sinclair. He is not particularly an old guy. He's in his late 20s, early 30s, if I remember correctly. And he seems to be going through almost like an early midlife crisis where he starts doubting himself, starts doubting everything in the world, and he's very unsure about everything, frankly, around him. And he starts writing a autobiography. He goes to his country house and he doesn't know what else to do himself, so he just starts writing. And when he starts writing this autobiography, he kind of loses himself in the writing of it and in the imaginary world that he creates. And it's a very cerebral novel, which I've read other books by Priest before, which are very cerebral, and they have worked for me much better than this. It was cerebral, but the main character was, frankly, I didn't care about in the slightest, and the idea of the plot was a bit like, so, you want me to care? I don't. It felt irrelevant to most cases, and what Priest was trying to achieve with this, I don't know. I think it was a case of him writing about a man who was not happy with life and how you can get lost in yourself when you're trying to find purpose in life, which most people can understand at some point in their life. I know I've been there at least once, briefly, but this didn't work out. The dialogue between him and his sister, for instance, who he's trying to help him out, felt odd, and the way he thinks, I was not a fan of. He's not a very optimistic character. He's actually quite pessimistic. I am optimistic by nature, though there's already a conflict of personalities between me and the main character, which I can normally get past, but not so easily in this, because it was all about him as one person, almost solely. So sadly, this didn't work out for me at all well. The next book is Domes of Fire by David Eddings. This is the combined Tamulai trilogy, which is a big 3 books in one trilogy. However, I only read Domes of Fire. I will not be reading the other 2 books in this trilogy because I did not enjoy Domes of Fire at all. Now, the previous trilogy that I read by David Eddings about 4 years ago now, quite early in my little booktube life, I really enjoyed it. It was fun. It was sort of quite stereotypical, sort of old-fashioned fantasy, but it was enjoyable. This wasn't fun because, frankly, it just felt as though he's using the same set of characters again from that trilogy and putting them in a slightly different plot line by name, but essentially they're just rehashing old ground. The characters are very obviously stereotypes. The situations and the bad guys and the sort of peril in this world are, frankly, stereotypes, and there's nothing new about this book. It just feels as though I'm reading a slightly odd version of the Millennium Trilogy, which I read 4 years ago, and he doesn't do anything new or try to evolve himself as a writer, or indeed evolve the characters of the world. They're just there for him to think, right, let's write another book similar to the first one in a slightly different names. I wanted to like this, I expected to like it because I liked that trilogy, but this just felt like a rehash of something that was good. Bringing up the past in this way where it's in a non-original manner doesn't work out well, and frankly this book really didn't work out well for me at all. So that's it for this trilogy. I will not be reading the other 2 novels in this one. The next book that I read was the only book of July that I read, and also happened to be the only ebook that I read on my Kindle as well, and that is The Orphans of Raspe by Lois McMaster Bujold. Now this is a novella. It is the 7th book in the Penric and Desdemona series, which Bujold started about 2.5 years ago now. I could be mistaken, but it's roughly around then. I have loved, as you may know if you've watched older videos where I talk about them, every single novella in this series. This is the 7th. and this is still fantastic. And I love these novellas to pieces, and indeed the characters, the writing, the world, everything is brilliant. They're well constructed, the pacing is fantastic, the characters are fun and enjoyable to read about. You actually care about the characters and want them to do well. Penric is a normal guy in the first novella who ends up getting essentially a demon in his mind, which gives him essentially magical powers. That's how you become a magic user in this world. And the demon's name is Desdemona, hence Penric and Desdemona series. And they keep getting into essentially a series of adventures essentially in this fantasy world. Each one is fantastic because each one builds upon previous novellas, but each one is fully independent, although I would greatly recommend you read them in publication order, in series order, because they build up and they build the characters in particular up so much better. You could read them individually, but there's little aspects of the characters that would still work, but you'd lose some of the effects and some of the humour of the characters, I think, if you didn't read them in order. So I would recommend this to everybody. Frankly, this novella series started with the first one, and because these are just fantastic, I love these in every way possible. I was starting to think that maybe if there was going to be a seventh, that surely at some point there might be one that's not as good, because you know, how can you keep writing a series of novellas about the same two character set, about adventures in this way? But apparently Bujold manages it extremely well because it's still fantastic. One after another, it's just fantastic novella after fantastic novella. Yeah, that worked out rather well for me, and I can't recommend this enough. The next book I read was one that I didn't understand at all, and I can't even describe the plot for you particularly well, because that is Dreaming in Smoke by Tricia Sullivan. Now this should in theory be a book, again, I've said that several times in this video, which I should like, because it deals with the main character, who's called Calypso Deed, strange character but whatever. Now she is lives on a space station, I think, where, and this is one of the few things that I'm still not entirely sure of, and she is the sort of interface between the real world and an artificial intelligence called Ganesh. And the AI, Ganesh, starts malfunctioning, and this causes innumerable problems on the space station and on the neighbouring planet. And that's as far as I can describe the plot, because I didn't actually understand most of the plot. The concept sounds really interesting, I think it is, but I didn't really understand what I was reading, which is kind of ridiculous by itself. I was reading this as part of a group read. I've got a Goodreads group associated with this, which I'll link in the description box below, and none of the people that were reading this, none of us really understood it entirely. We were all a bit confused, because it seems as though to me that was the point she was trying to do in this book. She was trying to write a book that confused the reader and had to make them think. To me though, she went too far on confusing the reader. She confused me to the point where it didn't make any sense, and I was just like, I don't care anymore. I lost interest in this book very early on, frankly, and then I was just reading it because it was a group read, and I felt I needed to read it. To be honest, I probably would have put it down if it hadn't been a group read, because it was meaningless, because I didn't understand almost anything I was reading. I mean, some people might understand it, maybe, can't think who, but some people might. So it might work for other people, just not for me this time. The final two books of this video are both by the same author, and those are the Iliad and the Odyssey, both by Homer. Now this is obviously translated from the ancient Greek. These are both very classic mythological stories. The Iliad is based around the siege of Troy, which took place over 9 years. It involved Achilles, you know, the legendary hero, you know, Achilles' heel is from him, and Agamemnon, who is for all intents and purposes, the big king who sort of is trying to boss him around as such, and various adventures and sort of heroic encounters entail from this story. Now, the Odyssey is essentially about one hero on his return from this, essentially, and he gets into a series of adventures on different islands. On one of the islands, for instance, and this is the well-known one, his crew gets turned into animals, as is often the case. And both of these stories have been pulled apart and used piecemeal in multiple other movies, series, cartoons. I mean, The Simpsons have parodied both of these, and multiple other cartoons have parodied them, and not just the whole stories but sections of them. And at this point, these are very well known stories, and I did actually know them. I didn't realise I knew as much about both of these as I did, because I've never read, I'm not familiar with sort of more older books like this and old styles like this. So I enjoyed it for that. However, the writing style I did not enjoy, and frankly I found this to be quite a slog, because I am not used to, if you didn't already know, this kind of writing style, this kind of book. So this took me a long time to get through, because I was trying to figure out how to understand this verse, because it's not written in exactly a normal way that I'm used to. I'm used to modern writing styles. This is not, obviously, this is ancient Greek, multiple thousands of years old. So it worked, but not as well as it could do, because I didn't have the understanding there, and I didn't have the connection with this writing style. If I had that, this might have worked for me better. I will probably reread this in the far future, after I've read, and I do want to read more stories and books with this kind of language usage, because I think it will do me a lot of good, and it will be highly beneficial to me to learn this kind of writing and this kind of reading, because I'm not used to it. I would like to have some understanding of it rather than being ignorant of it, frankly, because I don't understand it yet. So that will come in time, and I will reread this then, and it will probably work out for me much better then. At the moment, it was interesting, just odd for now. But it's not bad. It's not bad, obviously. I need understanding first, then I can actually understand this itself, as it is often the case. So with that said, that is actually it for all of the books that I read in July. If you've read any of these, or you would like to, you have any interesting thoughts on them, then please by all means drop a comment and we can have a discussion on them. Or if you want to try and explain something about one of the books that I've missed, which there were multiple of, then please by all means do that as well, because I would greatly like to still understand these books, very much so. The links to anything that I mentioned, specifically the Goodreads group, which involves a group read every month, I will link in the description box below, along with all my social media links. That said, that is it for this video. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you another day. Bye for now.